Anything else you want to say to your fans, man?
Man, shout out to DONTAE'S Boxing Nation. You know, follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, Errol Spence Jr., my whole name, and just look out for me.
The fight I'm looking forward to see is anybody with a title versus Errol Spence. That's my boy.
Errol Spence.
He deserves a shot. These dudes need to quit ducking him. Danny Garcia finna fight this dude that he cleaned up already. Like, man, y'all dudes is playing too.
Yeah, they're gonna have to see Errol Spence after the winner of Thurman Garcia.
What's gonna happen is they gonna piss him off, cause they ain't even seen him mad for real yet. And when he fight one of them, when he finally get, he gonna end their career. That's what's gonna happen. He gonna shadow a rib or something. Like, shit gonna be real, man. That's what's gonna happen.
I mean, but how's he gonna get the belt? Because Kell Brook, he's still the
fight Rick Khan.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know what the fuck going on, man. He just, hey, man. All these dudes know what they doing by standing away from Errol. And for real, as a fan, I'd be mad. Like, man, I want to see that fight. But like, as a dude who want to stay in good health, I don't blame them. And they don't want to die, man. You know what I'm saying? He killing people in that ring, man.
After that Jesse Vargas fight, they got to give you that shot after that, right? Yeah.
I'm gonna push for him. Either they gotta give him a shot or they gotta vacate or whatever, but somebody gonna give me something.
Oh, you gonna be on that hashtag, just give me my belts, huh?
Just give me my belts,
like
man.
Golovkin,
Give me my belts, man.
DONTAE'S Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? Well, you heard it from the man himself, Errol Spence. He just said it right there. If Kell Brook doesn't fight me next after the Jesse Vargas fight, which turned out to be the Gennady Golovkin fight, then he's going to have to give up those belts. It's pretty much what Errol Spence said. And it's unbelievable, since Kell Brook lost to Gennady Golovkin, when you thought he had really nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, no direction to go other than towards Errol Spence, all of a sudden he still finds a way to avoid his mandatory. This is unbelievable. It's unprecedented when you guys really, really think about it. And what's crazier is, it's shocking to me how many boxing fans are defending a champion for avoiding his mandatory. Now, you know what happens when you try to defend someone no matter what? You're willing to defend them at all costs. You know what usually happens? What usually happens is they make it harder for you to defend them. And that's basically what we're seeing in this whole Kell Brook Errol Spence situation. Because at first, you know, it started off as Errol Spence, he ain't done nothing. He doesn't deserve to fight Errol Spence, or Kell Brook rather. That's what they were saying long time ago, before Errol Spence knocked out Algieri and Bundu, et cetera, before he became an official mandatory. This is what the fans were trying to say. They were defending Kell Brook's actions, right? But then it got to the point to where there was really no excuse that you could make for why Kell Brook is not facing his mandatory. Then some of the fans started saying, oh, come on, man. Kell Brook just wants to make money. And there's no money in fighting against Errol Spence. He's not a star, et cetera, et cetera. He's overhyped, et cetera. All of this stuff they were saying, right? But that didn't make sense, because if this was a money thing and Kell Brook was looking to face a bigger name opponent or whatever the case may be, then why did he fight two no-name mandatories before the Golovkin fight? Why did he do that? If he didn't want to fight guys that weren't worthy to be in the ring with him, why did he fight the other mandatories? How do you guys explain that? You can't say it's because Errol Spence is not a star because the other two mandatories, they weren't stars. In fact, if you really think about it, if this is really a money situation, Kell Brook stands to make 5 times more money against Errol Spence than he did against the 2 mandatories that he faced prior. So you can't use that excuse anymore. And now it's getting even more difficult to defend Kell Brook's actions because now Kell Brook is talking about fighting Amir Khan, but before he fights Amir Khan, he wants a tune-up bout. So not only does he want another fight before he's forced to fight Errol Spence, but he wants 2 more fights before he fights Errol Spence. And actually, I shouldn't even say before he fights Errol Spence, because I think it's more than obvious now Kell Brook never had any intentions of ever facing Errol Spence if he could get around it. That's what we're seeing right now. Now, I want to speak to you fans. Once again, Kell Brook is making it very difficult to justify his actions right now. If Kell Brook wants a tune-up bout to prepare for Amir Khan, a guy that just came off of a knockout loss and hasn't fought since, if he needs a tune-up fight for Amir Khan, can you imagine how many tune-up fights he thinks he needs for Errol Spence? And to go even further, for the fans that say, hey, stop blowing up Errol Spence, he's overhyped, he ain't no one, and he doesn't deserve to be in the ring with Kell Brook, etc., etc. If Errol Spence is that overhyped, why doesn't Kell Brook use him as a tune-up for Amir Khan? Because he's a nobody, right, fans? Because he's overhyped, right, fans? Something else I want to ask you, fans. Please explain this. Please try to make sense of this one. Now, you say Errol Spence doesn't deserve to be in a ring with Kell Brook, right? You say he's nobody, and this is the way boxing works, and all this ridiculous stuff that you guys use to defend Kell Brook. So if that is the case, answer this question. Is Kell Brook, if he's going to take a tune-up bout, is that tune-up opponent going to be more worthy of getting in the ring with Kell Brook than Errol Spence? Because by the decaf's own admission, you guys said that Errol Spence doesn't deserve to be in the ring with Errol Spence. So how are you going to justify Kell Brook getting in the ring with a guy who really doesn't deserve to be in the ring with Kell Brook compared to Errol Spence? How do you explain that? Okay, because once again, if this has nothing to do with Errol Spence just being a humongous threat, why is Kell Brook willing to fight other mandatories? Why is he willing to face lesser competition? Because we all know that most likely the guy that Kell Brook fights next, if he does take a tune-up before the Amir Khan fight, we know for a fact that that opponent is not going to be a big name. Matter of fact, it's most likely going to be someone we never heard of, right? So once again, fans, how do you explain this? You're going to still tell me that he's not ducking? Because I ain't going to even beat around the bush. Are you going to honestly tell me he's not ducking Errol Spence to take an easier route? I mean, it's just common sense. And then you have these decafs that say, hey, you're just an Errol Spence fan, etc., etc., etc. Man, what has this sport come to when fans will say, if you want the champion to fight his number one contender, you must just be a fan of that number one contender? What kind of sense does that make? What kind of sense does that make? So you're telling me that the IBF, they're just big fans of Errol Spence because they want to mandate this bout? How does that make any sense? And for all the fans sitting over here saying, oh, you're just a big Errol Spence fan, etc., etc. Please explain this to me. Why is it the majority of professional boxers and trainers, every time I ask them who is the best welterweight, who is the most dominant, who do you see as the last man standing when all the dust settles in the welterweight division? Why do 95% of all of them always say Errol Spence? So are you telling me that all these professional boxers and trainers that do this for a living, they're just big Errol Spence fans? Or are they just fans of very skilled, technical, dominant type of fighters? I mean, what is it? There's no way you guys can rationalize this situation. It does not make sense. Because deep down, these fans that defend Kell Brook, they know what time it is. They don't want to say it because of pride. But they know that this man is dangerous. How do you root for a guy that wants to avoid his mandatory? We're not talking about some guy just calling out another guy. We're not talking about just some random fighter saying, hey, I want to fight Kell Brook. No, we're talking about a mandatory. And not only that, but we've seen Errol Spence face, keep fighting eliminator bouts, etc., just to get his hands on Kell Brook. So how do you try to make sense of this? You can't make sense of it. So right now, it's time for the IBF to put their foot down and go ahead and take this man's belt away, just like the WBC did when it came to Canelo. You either fight or you give up the belt. I mean, me personally, I have no problem with Kell Brook giving up the belt and fighting whoever he wants. But don't hold the belt hostage and continue to fight guys that you feel you have a chance against just because now you have a tough mandatory. I mean, you're holding up progression, basically. Because we have all of these welterweights, at least welterweights like Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, Errol Spence, Sean Porter. These guys are willing to prove that they're the best in the division. While Amir Khan and Kell Brook, I should say, not Amir Khan. While Kell Brook, as good as Kell Brook is, right now, he's just looking for the safest opponent. And I had someone leave a message on the last video where I talked about this situation, and they said, come on, man. If he fought against Gennady Golovkin, why would he be afraid of Errol Spence? Man, I keep trying to educate you decafs. You have to understand something. Styles make fights. Styles make fights. This is the reason why Canelo is willing to move all the way up to 165. When he was just saying, not even 6 months ago, in order for Golovkin to fight me, he's gonna have to come down to 154. This is the reason why Canelo was willing to fight a much, much bigger Chavez than a Gennady Golovkin, because he has a much better chance beating a bigger Chavez than beating a same size Gennady Golovkin, even though that fight may eventually come to fruition. But that's the reason why Canelo is attempting to do this. It's obvious, isn't it? Golovkin attempted to do the same thing. Golovkin, who said that he'll fight Andre Ward at 164, but then all of a sudden, when Carl Froch's name, was mentioned, he said he was willing to go all the way up to 170 and fight Carl Froch at a catch weight, rather than fight Andre Ward at 168. And even when Golovkin said he was willing to fight, or his team said they wanted to fight Ward at 164, once Andre Ward actually called them on the bluff, they said that we're not interested in the fight, maybe 2017 or something like that. That's pretty much what they said. Carl Frampton did the same thing. Carl Frampton's mandatory was pound for pound, top 5, one of the best fighters in the world, Guillermo Rigondeaux. When Rigo was Carl Frampton's mandatory, what did Carl Frampton do? He said, I'm not fighting that monster. I'd rather move up to a higher weight class, fight a bigger guy, than fight Guillermo Rigo. That's exactly what Frampton did. Carl Frampton, he'd rather fight a bigger Leo Santa Cruz, who we know is far more easier than a Guillermo Rigondeaux. These people are not stupid, man. These fighters are not stupid. They know their limits, and they know the risk that is involved with stepping up in competition. So that's the reason why Kell Brook would move up. He would fight Golovkin rather than fight an Errol Spence. You got to think about it. Once again, when people see Floyd Mayweather moving up 5 weight classes, fighting much bigger, stronger, undefeated fighters, even when I ask some of you fans, why do you think Floyd does that? What do some of you guys say? You say, oh, well, of course Floyd does it because he knows that he's smart. You know, he knows that he's not going to get hit, and he knows that his skills are so superior to these bigger guys that he's facing. That's why he would rather face these bigger guys, right? Well, that was the thinking with Kell Brook. Kell Brook went into the Golovkin fight thinking, this guy, he doesn't have the greatest defense. I watched the Willie Monroe fight. He's never fought against an athletic guy. He's never been tested before. He comes forward. His style is tailor-made for mine. This was the thinking of Kell Brook going into that fight. Even though he's a middleweight and I'm a welterweight, worst case scenario, he beats me, and guess what? I lost to a middleweight, so it really doesn't affect my career that much. It was a win-win situation for Kell Brook fighting against a middleweight. Even Gennady Golovkin said it himself after the fight. He said he didn't really respect Kell Brook's power. He said the guy is not a middleweight. The guy is a welterweight. This is what Golovkin said after the fight. So once again, to answer your question in detail, the reason why Kell Brook would fight a Golovkin rather than fight Errol Spence, because it is a win-win situation. If Kell Brook goes in there and gets knocked out by or just dominated by Errol Spence, it's a lose-lose situation. You see how it works? If Golovkin and Errol Spence were in the same division, what fighter do you think the average opponent would prefer to fight? In other words, what opponent do you think a fighter would think he has a better chance of beating? Errol Spence or Gennady Golovkin? The majority of people are going to think they have a better chance against Gennady Golovkin. Think about this for a second. You notice not too many fighters are willing to move up in weight to fight someone like a Guillermo Rigondeaux. Not too many fighters are willing to move up in weight to even fight a Lomachenko, an Andre Ward, a Sergey Kovalev, outside of Andre Ward, who was willing to do something like that. Even Sergey Kovalev himself, he wouldn't move up to a higher weight class to fight a fighter on the level of an Andre Ward. A pound for pound top fighter is the point that I'm making. But when it came to Gennady Golovkin, you have fighters that are willing to move up 2 weight classes to fight him. That's because they see chinks in his armor. And if you look at the highlights of the Kell Brook Golovkin fight, Kell Brook was right. There were chinks in the armor. He just didn't have the size and the discipline to carry out a victory. So with that being said, I expect the IBF to strip Kell Brook. I'm starting to feel that Kell Brook is finally accepting the fact that he has to give this belt up. And one more time, if Kell Brook just gives up the belt, I have no problem with him giving up the belt. But just move on so the show can go on. That's all I got to say about the situation. That's pretty much all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
Hi, you're watching DONTAE'S Boxing Nation.